action and reaction, erupting from a collective unconscious, deeply mired in grievances inherited from the past. Last Raisina, if you remember, 2025, we had assembled to discuss Kal Chakra, the cycle of time, reminding ourselves that transitions in the world order are never straightforward, never linear, but must be negotiated through contests, through differences between opposites. Each condition, every reality is conditioned by its opposite. Within this dance of opposites, civilizations, through centuries, like rivers, have flowed through cycles of integration and disintegration. Today, as we open the 11th edition of the Raisina Dialogue, we find ourselves in a moment of disintegration. When the question that haunts everyone is, why does an intelligent species, why do strong nations make choices that seem so clearly self-destructive? The answer to this question, the one that explains the turmoil not just in West Asia, but across so much of the turbulence from the Americas to the Indo-Pacific, the answer to this lies within the Indian intellectual tradition of sanskar. Sanskar is not something to be easily trivialized in an Instagram reel as a piece of cultural memorabilia. It is not just a rite of passage. It is not the sacred thread wound around the torso. In fact, to wear sanskar as a badge of identity is to trivialize it. Sanskar runs far deeper. It is the code that runs a civilization. But it is not a static code. It is not a piece of DNA, a strand of DNA frozen in amber. The purpose of sanskar is never to make us prisoners of the groove, endlessly repeating the same rutted patterns of behavior. The purpose is to let the groove guide the water to the field, to irrigate it, to enliven it. That is sanskar. For a groove that traps water turns any field into a swamp in no short time. A groove that irrigates creates life. A nation primed for assertion becomes a prisoner of the groove. It operates out of a wounded sense of self-worth with the force of historical memory. It escalates because its historical scars compel it to escalate. And it withdraws only when fresh wounds force it to withdraw. Caught in a web of imagined power, addicted to its own narrative, it's a prisoner of primitive stimulus response dressed up in the language of tactics. The true etymological power of sanskar actually lies in samatva, balance. Balance is about the middle path, about equanimity. It encourages not assertion, but the second part of sanskar, which is accommodation. The need to see that in a world where every reality is defined and limited by its opposite, the opposite, is not a target, but a mirror. Advancement actually lies in the sanskar of accommodation. So sanskar teaches us what it is to be human. An intelligent species cannot be the product of past residues. It is not a helpless inheritor of grievances passed down like family heirlooms. It is willing to ask difficult questions in order to reap the fruits of refinement. Today, from research in tariffs to research in geopolitics, in a world of data centers, automation, and digitally enabled warfare, we are not advancing, but rather confronting a complex overlay of the old and the new. The conflicts we witness are new only in their technological prowess. The impulses that rise from are inherently old. The solutions to them will not be found in silos, and least of all by those who mistake narrative for reality, make it the substance of power. The solutions demand sustained interrogation, intellectual engagement, ideological candor, and the willingness to engage across profound differences. It is therefore timely and deeply significant that we have today with us His Excellency Mr. Alexander Stubb, President of Finland, as a chief guest in this edition of the Raisina Dialogue. European civilization, too, finds itself at a consequential juncture. Finland has served as a pillar of the Western order for generations, as it now also introspects about the contours of the future. Finland's journey, shaped by geography, by resilience, by strategic clarity, in the most difficult of circumstances, offers a particularly relevant lens for examining questions of sovereignty, security, and cooperative multilateralism. Finland understands that nations, small and large, must navigate not through assertion alone, but through the conscious refinement of national interests. We no longer actually operate in the simple world of states talking to states. So that is why we have Raisina. We live in a multi-nodal reality, where knowledge and power flow through networks encompassing far more than just governments. And at the Raisina Dialogue, our attempt is to gather all such nodes together for 3 days, to create a space where policymakers, practitioners, scholars, and innovators deliberate without artifice. In an age defined by fragmentation, we present a platform to test ideas, to listen as much as to speak, to realize that tomorrow need not be shaped by the anxieties of today. The task before us is not merely to interpret change, but to shape it collectively so that our shared civilizational confidence can come together to do better than simply react. So I invite all of you over the next 3 days to engage not as prisoners of the groove, but as irrigators of new possibilities. With that, I present His Excellency Dr. Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland, to give us the benefit of his thoughts. Dr. Stubb, the floor is yours.
Mr. Prime Minister, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here today inaugurating the Raisina Dialogue. It's also a great honor for me as the President of Finland to have spent the better part of 3 hours in the presence of the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, today. We got to be such good friends that I feel I can say this. For me, it was an empowering moment because today we stood there together representing almost 1.5 billion people. And I'm sorry the speech is going to go only downhill from here. During the past decade, it's been remarkable to see how Raisina has developed into one of the foremost platforms for strategic thinking and global engagement. And I think for that, we should all be thankful to both Minister Jai Shankar and Samir Saran. The fact that you've been able to do this in 11 years and gather such a distinguished group with some flight problems getting here, I think is remarkable. So congratulations for that. Let me take some 20 minutes of your time and begin by the following. I think we human beings make 3 mistakes. The first mistake is that we over-rationalize the past. We think that the world worked in a certain way and juxtapose examples thereof. The second mistake we make is that we over-dramatize the present. And when we do these 2 mistakes, the problem is that we end up underestimating the future. And I'll try to avoid that today, but the problem is that us nerds of international relations, we quite often draw parallels between the past and the present, sometimes to make convincing sounding predictions, and sometimes just to make the case that the world was more orderly and much better in the good old days. At the same time, we get quite het up about things that we see around us. as if the world has never experienced crisis of the scale that we are presently facing. I was reminded of this lately when, over the holidays, I read the biography of U Thant, former Secretary General of the UN, first Asian one. The book was called The Peacemaker. And I just drew the conclusion that, at least having read that, the number of global crises is actually fairly constant. Now, by this, I do not in any which way want to diminish the significance of the increase of the number of local and regional conflicts that we are now witnessing around the world. I'm deeply concerned what we see today in the Middle East, in Sudan, and in Ukraine, just to name a few. My worry, though, is that these conflicts are incrementally becoming global. And my aim today is to try to find a pathway back to an international order in which institutions, norms, and rules are respected. Without a functioning world order, power vacuums will be filled by raw power, rogue behavior, and predatory hegemons. So today we hear assessments that the rules-based world order is dead, that a wrecking ball is destroying all of the international institutions and rules that have been built since World War II, and that the rupture of the old system is inevitable. Sure, we're living through a major challenge in world politics. Sure, the old order is being challenged, questioned, and attacked. But I would argue against a binary, everything is lost kind of a view. I think the reality is actually much more complex. I really liked Mark Carney's speech in Davos, and Mark was here on a visit as well a few weeks back. And I sort of want to build on his speech here today. But instead of only describing what is presently wrong of the global order, or disorder as the case might be, or longing back to the good old days, I think we should set our sights on the future. We should strive to provide concrete normative proposals on how to fix the global order and make it work better for all. That is not idealism, but it is motivated by interests and realism. Now, you'll know that we Finns are often described as being cool, calm, and collected. And I see at least 2 former Swedish prime ministers and a former Danish prime minister in the audience, and you can ask them, I'm sure they will agree. Now, when the going gets tough, a Finn goes in the sauna and takes an ice bath. We consider it a good way to clear the mind, take a breather, and try to understand what is going on in the world. And that's what I'll try to do today. Not in the sauna or the ice bath, but here from the podium. I think this goes quite well with the theme of this year's Raisina dialogue, Sanskara, assertion, accommodation, and advancement, just like the chairman just noted. I think we have to sit down during these 3 days, take the world as it is, and make the best out of it in a dignified manner. So today I will kick off the Raisina dialogue by focusing on 2 things. First, I will attempt to identify the problem. So what's wrong with the world order today? And second, I will try to outline a number of possible concrete solutions for the future, which you can then tear apart